Hello everyone, this is Christophe speaking, and I have Emmanuel with me. And as it was just said, we will present you today a session about the choices that you have when developing area applications for the web and for the mobile. So the agenda is the following. First, we will have an introduction where we will define what we call advanced area applications, so that we are all on the same line and that we share the same understanding of the concepts we will talk about during the presentation. Second, I will show some very quick screenshots of such applications, so that we're still sharing the same view of what we will be talking about. And then at the third point, we will introduce the three technologies we will discuss today. The first one being HTML5 in Dojo, the second one being Adobe Flex, and the third one, Microsoft Civilized. Then, as you can see on the agenda, we will dive into the details of some of the specific parts of each of these technologies, seeing what are the pros and cons of the various technologies. And finally, we will conclude with some live demos and some insights on what you can, which technology you can choose for your area project. So let's start with the definition. Basically, what we call an advanced area application is area applications where you basically want to have the desktop experience in the browser. That means that you don't want just area applications with forms and grids and what you usually encounter on the web, but you want something more. Typical requirements for such applications are AV data management. That means that you want to display thousands of data. You don't just want to display a few data items, but a lot of them. A second important point is, of course, the responsiveness of the UI. You don't want to be blocked when you will go back to the server to get some answers and things like that. You really want to deal with your application just like with a desktop application one more time. You also want advanced graphics. This means that you don't just want some raster images and colors and things like that. You want to go further. You want to have filtering effects. You want to have curves and things that are quite complex to draw on the screen. And a very important point is that you want complex user interactions. For example, you don't want just a single selection, but you want multiple selections. You want to be able to do complex gestures with the mouse or the touch events if you are on the mobile devices. So that's something to take into consideration. Of course, you want your application to be nice looking, but I would say it's not specific to advanced area, but it's important. You want to have animations in your application. So animations are not useful in themselves, but in some cases they bring additional information. When you are, for example, moving from one data set to another one, having an animation that goes between the two data sets might help you to better understand the changes that are appearing in the underlying data. Another important point is the ability to have some offline management of the application. It's more and more common to use area application over a network that can disconnect, like a Wi-Fi or a 3G network, and so you don't want to be stopped by the fact you don't have the network available anymore. So that's something you must take into account when developing such kind of application. So let's see some screenshots now. So here I have put three examples of area applications that we have built here. So as you can see, this is not just simple applications. You have map components, you have diagram components, you have gauges. You have really things that you usually see more on a desktop application than in a web application. But that's what we are targeting, and that's what we will be talking about today. So now that we have seen what we will be talking about, let's describe three technologies that can answer these requirements. And what are these technologies? The first one we will be talking about is HTML5 and Dojo. So as you probably know, HTML5 is an ongoing W3C specification that describes the future of HTML. And it contains very advanced features that were not in HTML before and that are really helping answering some of the requirements I've just talked about. There's, for example, the Canvas API that allows you to draw advanced graphics in a HTML application. There is the drag-drop API, very important for desktop very important for desktop integration. There is the ability to do some offline storage and much more. And actually today, the HTML5 term is really encompassing more than this specification. There are a lot of things going around HTML5, like, for example, CSS3 specification, or the progresses of the modern browsers in terms of JavaScript engine. And all these things are sometimes encompassed in the HTML5 term. And all these technologies are very important when you are building an advanced array application. But what you have to know is that they are not enough, because they are, very relatively low-level specifications. And when you are building application, you usually need a framework. And an example of such a framework that is built on top of HTML is the Dojo toolkit. And that's what we will concentrate on today. There are other toolkits available, but the one we have experience with, Emmanuel, is the Dojo toolkit, so that's what we will be talking about. So the Dojo toolkit at its core is really an abstraction above all the browsers. Even if we have HTML5 today, we still have some pretty important discrepancies between what the various browsers are supporting. And so we need an API that abstracts all of this so that we don't have to care about the low-level details. And that's what Dojo is doing. It's an open source project. It is hosted by the Dojo Foundation, and it's available under a dual license, including a BSD license, which is very good for reuse of this code. Dojo contains these abstractions that I talked about, but it contains also a set of widgets that you can use for your array application. I've listed some of them on the slide here, like a button, list, grid. But you also have some more advanced widgets that are not available in the core Dojo package, but available as extensions like charting. So that's the first technology we will see today. The second one is Adobe Flex. So it's also an open source project, but that is a lot under the control of Adobe. It's available under the MPL license, and it's based on the proprietary Adobe Flash Player format and API. So it is also providing some predefined components. The current version is Flex SDK 4.1, and the next version, 4.5, will soon be released and is targeting mobile devices. So it will still work for web applications, of course, but they have a strong focus on mobile devices for this next release. The third technology we will talk about today is Microsoft Civilized. By a lot of aspects, it's very similar to Flex. It's, I would say, even more proprietary. It also provides a lot of predefined components, as you can see on the slide. The latest version is Silverlight 4, and here also we have a new release of Silverlight 5 that will be coming a little bit later this year. So now that we have seen which technology we will talk about today, let's go into a little bit more details and take some aspects of these technologies and see how they behave respectively. So the first important point when you are developing an application is, of course, the language that you will use to develop this application. Basically, each of the solutions we've seen today will have its own programming language. You will have JavaScript for HTML5 and Dojo. You will have ActionScript for Adobe Flex and Visual Basic or C# for Microsatellite. The last two languages are strongly typed languages versus a loosely typed language for JavaScript. So if you need some strongly typed language, you need to take the last two ones. The first one won't do that. The last two ones also share the object-oriented paradigm. They are both based on object-oriented concepts, while JavaScript is more based on a prototype paradigm. However, if you use the framework like the Dojo framework, there's a good chance that the framework will fake the object-oriented paradigm on top of JavaScript. So you might find more useful to use such a framework if you are used to use an object-oriented language. Another important point is that the two last languages, ActionScript and Microsatellite languages, will be compiled to bytecode that will be interpreted in a virtual machine, while the JavaScript language is directly interpreted by the browser and its engine. So that means that often the Silverlight and Flex languages will be a bit faster than JavaScript because they have this bytecode. However, the JavaScript engine browsers are really improving these years, and so it's not a difference as big as it used to be. There are also some other tricks about language execution. For example, in Flex and JavaScript, you have some time limits about the number of milliseconds an action can take. So if you hold the thread for more than this time, you will have an exception. And so you have to be sure, if you have lengthy tasks, to cut them in little pieces so that they can be below this time limit. So as I said, you have usually C# that is faster than ActionScript, that is faster than JavaScript. There are also a lot of tricks that you can apply to improve the execution speed of your web applications. For example, in ActionScript, there are two types of array, the ones of the array class and the ones of the vector class. And if you have a compact array, you should really use a vector array because it's far more faster than a regular array. So that's something you should keep in mind. There are really facilities for you to get faster applications. Another important point after languages is the availability of the solution. As I say, Dojo is really based on open standard and it's really available everywhere, including on mobile devices now, with all the browsers and mobile devices that are based on WebKit. Adobe Flex Technologies is based on the Flash player, so it's available almost everywhere on desktop because the Flash player is almost everywhere there. There's less deployment on mobile, but still you can, on Android mobile, deploy Flex applications. For Silverlight, the picture is a bit different. You really have a good deployment on Windows and macOS platforms, but it's a bit low on the other platforms. Of course, another important point is the development environment. So what you will use on a daily basis to develop your application. For HTML5 Dojo, you have several IDEs that are available. Some examples are Rational Application Developer, but you also have Aptana Studio and others. Usually, the debugger, in the case of HTML5, resides in the browser. This can be Firebug for Firefox, this can be Chrome Development Tools, this can be Internet Explorer 8 integrated debugger. And sometimes then you have a connection between this debugger and the IDE, but that's not the case for all IDEs. So you have to be aware of that and check if you really have a good integrated debugger. For the Adobe Flex platform, there is an IDE that is called Adobe Flash Builder. It comes in two versions, the Flash Builder Standard, that is described here on the slide, with code view, printing, refactoring, design view. So it's good, but it's probably better than what you have with JavaScript, but it's still a bit limited by some aspects. You have a premium version of it with unit testing and profiling. You also have some alternatives, not from Adobe, like the FDT IDE. But where you have the real best IDE is, I think, with Microsoft Civilized, where you have really a very good solution with Visual Studio. And here it comes in tons of versions, from a free version, Visual Studio Express, to a relatively expensive version. And here you really have a full solution with everything you would ever dream of for developing applications. Another point that we would like to discuss today is the third-party components, because when you will be developing an application, you will have the components that are available on the platform, but if you are doing advanced area application, you will soon have to rely on more advanced components that are not available on the platform. So when you are picking a platform, this is something you should look in advance. Will you be able to evolve and use new components? For the Dojo HTML5 world, well, there are a lot of components out there, but there is no real custom component ecosystem. Basically, each component is using its own way of doing things, and you might have interoperability issues when trying to make them. But you have some components. Just you have to be aware you might have some difficulties integrating them. On the Adobe Flex side, it's a bit different. Adobe is making sure they have a common platform for all the components, and there are some components providers, including IBM, with IBM ILOG Elixir, that gives you some more advanced components that are not available on the platform. For example, in IBM ILOG Elixir, we have a diagram component, we have Gantt component, we have maps components and calendars and things like that that you can leverage in your application. And it will be quite easy to integrate because the framework is such that it is really built to allow third-party components to come in. It's a little bit the same in the civilized world with even more providers, I think. Basically, all the .NET components vendors are also civilized offering, as you can see here. IBM also has a Gantt and diagram for civilized that you might find useful. And there's some open source components used by by Microsoft, called the Silverlight toolkit. So as I said, I was talking about UI framework, and they are very important for third-party components. They are also very important for the components you might want to create yourself. So it's up to Emmanuel now to take the presentation.
Okay, so about the UI frameworks, this is something important because this is how components are created. So in the Adobe Flex platform, there is a new UI framework since Flex 4, which is called Spark. And Spark is a UI framework that is making a strong difference between the core logic of the component and the rendering. So the nice thing about this is that you can place any type of rendering, any type of skin on top of a component, so that will allow you to create your own personal button or your own personal list with your personalized look and feel for your company or for your application. In the Microsoft Silverlight technology, the system is very similar. There is this same separation between the control itself, the component itself, and what Microsoft calls the control template, which is very similar to Flex Skin, and the control template is actual look of the component and also the behavior. In the Flex platform, you would write the scheme in an XML language which is called MXML, which is a declarative way to describe the scheme of the component. On the Microsatellite, it's very similar. You will use an XML format called XAML, which again is a language that will allow you to describe the look of your component. And both systems also, they have what they call a system of binding, which is a way to connect the data to the components. So you would, for example, you might want to, for example, connect two components together, or you might also want to indicate that in some portion of a list, for example, you want to display some portion of your data source, and this you do this in a declarative way, which is something very new in those technologies. In Silverlight, the difference is that maybe the binding is going one step further than what Flex is doing, and you can, for example, do many things with binding, like, for example, doing data conversion. As you bind, the data may be converted to get a new format that is more suitable for your component. So in HTML5 and in the Dojo framework that we're talking about today, the UI framework is called Digit. So Digit allows you to also make a declarative, declare your application in a declarative way through HTML. As it's described in the slide, here you see there is a declaration of HTML div, which is describing a chart widget. So if we use here the Dojo type parameter to give the type of the Dojo component that is going to be displayed in this HTML portion. There is no, in Dojo, and there is no separation as it exists in Silverlight or in Flex between the logic and the rendering, but there is a little bit of this through what is called HTML templates, which is an HTML portion of your component that will be rendered when your component is on the screen. So you can change this template and make a template that is more suitable for your personal application, but it's still limited to some HTML. So as you see, since there is a separation, when you can do a separation between the logic and the graphics, the main goal is to have the ability to change the graphic, and this requires some designers coming into play to create the graphics of your application, or to create the look of your buttons, all your forms elements. Both Flex and Silverlight, they provide tools for designing this. So in the Adobe world, Adobe is providing very well-known tools called Adobe Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator that will help, well, our designer tools, and very well known by designers to create any kind of sophisticated graphics. The result of these graphics in the Adobe platform can be used by a tool called Flash Catalyst. Flash Catalyst will allow to import these graphics and create a Flex application from it, a Flex skeleton based on this graphics, where you would, for example, indicate that this portion of the graphic is going to be a button, or this portion is going to be a slider. And the result of using Flash Catalyst will be finally importing into the Flash Builder, which is the Flex IDE, so that the developer would add the application logic on top of this graphics. So this is the tool chain for the Adobe Flex solution. There are still some problems on this tool chain on the Flex platform, because there is, well, the round trip from the Flex back to the Flash Catalyst not as good as we would expect. And mainly the biggest problem is mainly that this Flash Catalyst tool is today only supporting the Adobe components. So if you are using any third-party components, you will not be able to use Flash Catalyst to skin them. This is something Adobe is working on. On the Silverlight side and on the Microsoft side, Microsoft is providing a complete set of tools, which is called the expression tool. So there is a specific tool for designer called Expression Design, which is what you can compare to Adobe Illustrator, even though it's really less popular. This tool, Expression Design, is producing XAML. This XAML, which represents the design and the graphics of your application, can be imported into a tool called Expression Blend, which is a tool which will mix the design and the logic. Finally, the code is finally done inside the IDE, inside Visual Studio, and there is a good level of round trip that you can do with expression tools and Visual Studio, because Expression Blend tools will allow you to import Visual Studio projects. Inside Visual Studio, you can do a little bit of graphics, very, very minor graphics that you can do that. It's not that, it's quite good solution. On the Dojo side, there is no such a tool, but you would do the design of your application or your component mainly based on CSS and HTML. There's no specific tool chain. That's all the components that are built on top of Dojo. They provide you some CSS classes that you can tailor to your particular needs. So this is one way to customize the Dojo component. One important thing that we need when we are building advanced visualization and advanced rich internet application is the support for advanced graphics on the platform. So first talking about Dojo, Dojo has an API which is called JFX for vector graphics. It's an object-oriented JavaScript API that is cross-browser, like all the Dojo things are. And in fact, what JFX is providing is a way to hide the complexity of the browsers and the different technologies that are underneath, and provide you this two-day API that you can use without really knowing what technology is used underneath. In fact, underneath, SVG, VML, HTML5, Canvas are the technology that are really used depending on the platform. There are still differences that exist when you are using GFX, like for example, when you are on Internet Explorer, you might have some restriction when using gradients because it relies on VML, which has himself some restriction on gradients. But overall, it's a very convenient platform for doing graphics for the web. Some other problem that may appear and when you are rendering a lot of data on JFX is that the rendering speed and the response time of your application depends on the underlying technology. So you would get very good performances usually when using SVG, and really slower rendering speed when you're using VML on Internet Explorer. But all these things are really improving, and soon Internet Explorer 9 will come, and with SVG support, so all the main browsers will be relying on the SVG technology, and it will really simplify graphics for the web. Inside Dojo itself, there are many components that are relying on this API, this Dojo API. So, for example, the chartings and the gauges of Dojo. For Flex, there is also an API which is called FXG. So it's Adobe proprietary format for 2D graphics, and it provides basic 2D graphics elements like rectangle, ellipses, polygons, paths, everything you can dream up for advanced graphics. And those elements can be manipulated by the language ActionScript actually. In Silverlight also provides the same type of thing as a part of the XAML format. Main difference is that the graphics in most of the platform is hardware accelerated, so it makes a big difference in execution speed. So both Flex and Silverlight they have all the features of advanced graphics platform. So transformation, gradients, opacity, filter effects, everything you can dream up for advanced graphics. And of course, this in Flex and in Silverlight, this advanced graphics is the things that you are using for defining the graphics of your components, so for the schemes, or what Microsoft called the control template. So one important thing when you're building an application is how you are going to deploy it. Flex and Silverlight, they have a nicer option, which is a way to create to create a desktop application from their technology. So in Flex, not only you can create a web application, but you can also create a desktop application through the technology which is called Adobe Air. So Adobe Air is something you have to download and install on your computer. And when Adobe Air is installed, you can run Adobe Air applications, which are applications that you really install on your local computer, but they are built on top of the same API and the same language as a normal Flex web application. Silverlight has the same thing, so you can now, since Silverlight 4, create a desktop application, what we call out-of-browser application. And to do it, you only have to change one option in the XML file that describes your application to get a desktop application. Some of those applications, in many cases, they have restrictions, and in the Silverlight case, there is some options to bypass some of the security restriction that you have in such sandbox environment. For example, you have one important thing is that by signing, for example, a Silverlight application, you will have way to relax the cross-domain access restriction, which is something which is very important in many web applications. Well, the mobile deployment also is something that may be very interesting. So in Dojo and HTML5, now in most of the most important browsers on mobile, or like for iOS, on iPhones or Android phones or BlackBerry 6, all those phones, they are running a web browser that are all based on the WebKit project. And they can run HTML5 and Dojo nicely and natively. The Dojo community itself is working today to improve even more the Dojo toolkit for the support of mobile by providing some specific components dedicated for mobile, and also working on mobile enabling some of the existing components like charts or gauges, all the graphics spots. For the Flex platform, there is a Flash player, a version of the Flash player that works natively on Android phones, so you will be able to also deploy your application in Android phones. It's been announced also for BlackBerry phone, and to run on the iPhone, there is a solution that requires you to cross-compile your application to create a real iPhone application. But in this case, this is not an application anymore. So Silverlight in fact is becoming the main platform for developing applications for the Windows Phone 7 platform. It is a new phone platform by Microsoft. And you would do that by using Visual Studio 2010 that has an emulator, and all you need to build a Windows Phone 7 application, as well as additional classes for the support of the phone itself. So many options here for mobile. I'm trying to go a little bit faster, and a few words about concerns that are very important for internationalized application. So when you're doing an application for, a broad audience, a world audience, you would want to internationalize your application. You would do that in Flex by providing file bundles, which is a file that contains all your local specific information, which is very similar to what Java is providing. Interesting thing is that Flex 4.1 is introducing the layout direction property on components, which allows to create application with bi-directional mirroring for languages such as Arabic or Hebrew. On the Silverlight, you have the same type of internationalization feature, which would rely on XML format to create resource files. That depends on the language. You would compile them for creating DLL, and providing this language-specific information as DLL. And Silverlight 4 also has this native support for bidirectional languages. For HTML5 and Dojo itself, there is also a strong support for internationalization with formatting what's called the Common Local Data Repository for formats for date, numbers, currency for any place in the world. The components providing in Dojo also support bidirectional language. And as described in the slide, I'm not going into the details, but you would create a JSON in Dojo. It would be a JSON file for storing your language-specific information. Accessibility also is another concern. So there is a strong work on accessibility in the Dojo toolkit around the WAIARAI support, and also keyboard accessibility. Flex and Silverlight platform also have support of keyboard accessibility and the ability to work the ability to provide support for screen readers and also various different technology depending on the platform, which you might look on the slide. Going a little bit faster to give space for questions later. So let's talk a little bit about the connection to server data. So basically all the free solutions, they can work with all existing web technology, whether it's web services, REST API, but each of the platform, they have their own specific technology. In Flex, you would, for example, connect using the HTTP service to connect to data and pass the results using XML or JSON to feed your components. There is also some specific way to connect to Java Enterprise Edition data sources through what's called Granite data sources, Blaze data source, which is an open source project, who are the Adobe Lifecycle data sources, which is a commercial product. For Microsoft and Silverlight, there is what's called the Windows Communication Foundation, which is a data framework which is trying to unify various technology, not only the web technology, web services, REST technology, but also Microsoft MTS or .NET remoting technology. You have also the way to connect to data using the Microsoft Link technology. So Link is a way to do native data query inside the language, whether it's C# or VB. And Link has several flavors, and one is XML, so that you can do some queries, SQL-like queries on XML objects, or Link to SQL, where you're writing queries inside the C# language, and they would be executed on your SQL databases, and you get objects, resulting object as a C# or VB object. So that's pretty nice technology. WCF Data Services also is another service provided by Microsoft, which gives access to databases through a REST-like API. Pretty useful too. For Dojo, Dojo is providing a Dojo.data API, Dojo.data. This is a service that is an abstraction layer that gives access to a vast variety of data store, whether it can be JSON, it can be XML, CVS, or you can also extend this Dojo data API to connect to any kind of thing, whether it's your own specific data across the web. So we are now been through a lot of elements and those technology. I wanted to show you some of the components that we are building here on IBM, and some examples of components that you may you may find on the various platforms. So I hope you can see my screen, and there is a little close to the slide tab. There is a little button that you can click and to go in the full screen if you want to go to have a better view of what I'm going to show on the screen. So first of all, we have a set of flex components here. I'm starting with some charts components. Here it's 3D, 2D and a half type of charts, and for which I can play with various elevation. You will not be able to see the animation here, but I'm going to show some of the different chart types, which are provided by the IBM ILOG Elixir products. These products also providing gauges, so predefined gauges, and also a framework for you to build your own look, gauges with your own look, again with the styling and templating system that we have been talking about. This product also is providing advanced calendar with day, week, or month view. This is here the week view, the month view. Well, a lot of various components, which is showing you that you can, through this advanced flex technology, create applications that are really providing the same type of user interaction as a desktop application. Other type of example here a heat map, which is a map with various data layered on top of it. Another heat map here is showing some various connections of people all around the world inside a map with live data. So this is an example of mixing several components from the IBM ILOG Elixir product. Other type of component, and this time this is the Silverlight platform. So this is the Gantt chart display done through the Silverlight platform available from IBM. So I can actually interact with the Gantt chart data and the schedule data, my project, and zoom and pan, just like in a desktop application. And for a Dojo example, I have selected here an example of a Dojo charting module, which, as you can see, is providing a large variety of chart types, which can be skinned with different CSS themes. And I think that concludes the very fast demo I wanted to show you, just that you get a hint of the type of application that you are able to build with those platforms. Now I think we can move to questions.